Welcome back to the channel Treasure Hunters Coins, the place where hidden money, rare finds, and unbelievable coin stories come to life, and today you are about to hear one of the most shocking and controversial modern coin stories ever discussed in the numismatic world, a story that has collectors, dealers, and everyday people checking their pockets, jars, and drawers again and again. Because this episode is all about how an ordinary-looking 2015 P5-cent coin, a coin most people would spend without a second thought, could be worth an astonishing $15 million due to a combination of extreme errors, rare mistakes, production anomalies, and extraordinary circumstances that transformed a common modern nickel into a legendary treasure. And as you listen carefully from start to finish, you will understand why experts believe such a coin could exist, how it could escape the mint, what specific errors would elevate its value into the millions, and how you or someone you know might unknowingly possess a life-changing piece of history without realizing it. The year 2015 was not particularly famous at first glance in U.S. coinage, and the Philadelphia Mint, marked by the P mint mark on nickels, produced hundreds of millions of 5-cent coins that year, intended for everyday circulation, used in vending machines, grocery stores, gas stations, and daily transactions across America. And because of this massive production, most people assume that a 2015 P nickel has no value beyond its face value, but what most people do not understand is that rarity in coins is not always about age, it is about mistakes, anomalies, and deviations from the intended design and metal composition, and when several rare errors combine into a single coin, the result can be a numismatic unicorn, something so rare that its value is driven not by catalog listings but by private collectors willing to pay extraordinary sums for the chance to own something unique. To understand how a 2015 P5-cent could reach a theoretical value of $15 million, we must first understand how coins are made and how errors happen, because every valuable error coin begins as a failure in a system designed to be nearly perfect, yet no system created by humans is completely immune to mistakes. The U.S. Mint follows a strict process involving blank preparation, planchet cutting, annealing, cleaning, upsetting, striking, and inspection, and at each stage there are opportunities for things to go wrong, especially when production speed is high and demand is constant, and in 2015, the Mint was producing nickels at an enormous rate, increasing the chances that a few catastrophic errors could slip through unnoticed. One of the most valuable and dramatic possibilities for a 2015 P5-cent would be a wrong planchet error of the highest order, meaning the coin was struck not on a nickel planchet but on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination or even a different metal composition, and this is where values can explode, because if a 2015 P Jefferson nickel were struck on a silver planchet, a foreign alloy, or even an experimental metal never intended for circulation, the numismatic world would take immediate notice. Imagine a 2015 P5-cent struck on a silver dollar planchet, resulting in an oversized, overweight nickel with full design details but incorrect thickness and diameter, or even more extreme, a 2015 P nickel struck on a gold planchet or a platinum test blank accidentally left in the production line, something that sounds impossible but has historical precedent, because similar mistakes have occurred in the past, including famous wrong metal errors like the 1943 copper cent or the 1974 aluminum cent, coins that were never meant to reach the public but somehow did, and today are worth millions. Another possibility that could push a 2015 P5-cent toward the $15 million mark would be a transitional error, which occurs when old dies or old planchets are accidentally used during a period of change in composition or design. And while the nickel composition officially did not change in 2015, the Mint often experiments with metal compositions for research, testing, and future planning, and if a small batch of experimental alloy planchets were accidentally struck with 2015 P nickel dies and released, those coins would be among the rarest modern errors ever discovered. A 2015 P5-cent struck on an experimental alloy that shows unusual color, weight, magnetic properties, or resistance to corrosion would immediately raise red flags among experts, and if confirmed as an unauthorized release of experimental metal, collectors and institutions would compete fiercely to own it, driving its value into uncharted territory. Another catastrophic error that could contribute to extreme value is a double denomination error combined with multiple strikes, such as a 2015 P5 cent struck first as a different coin and then overstruck with nickel dies, resulting in overlapping designs, partial images, and mismatched inscriptions. And while double denomination errors are already rare, finding one on a modern coin in pristine condition would be extraordinary, and if the underlying coin were itself rare or struck on the wrong metal, the value would multiply exponentially. Imagine seeing traces of a dime, cent, or even a foreign coin beneath the Jefferson portrait in Monticello, creating a chaotic but fascinating visual record of minting failure, something that would instantly become a centerpiece in any elite collection. Off-metal strikes are not the only path to extreme value, because dramatic die errors can also create million-dollar coins when they are severe enough and combined with rarity, and one of the most powerful examples would be a full brockage error, where one coin gets stuck to a die and impresses its mirror image onto the next planchet, resulting in a coin with one normal side and one fully mirrored, ink-use design. And while brockages are known, a perfect full brockage on a modern nickel, especially if paired with other errors like off-center striking or misaligned dies, would be almost unheard of. Another highly valuable die error possibility is a massive die cap error, where a coin sticks to a die and continues to strike additional planchets, stretching and deforming into a cap shape while transferring distorted designs. And if a 2015 P5 cent were found in an early or mid-stage die cap condition with clear details and dramatic deformation, collectors would consider it a museum-level piece. One of the most sensational scenarios involves a mule error, where the obverse and reverse dies from two different coins are accidentally paired together, and while mules are extremely rare, they are among the most famous and valuable mint errors in history, such as the 2000 P Sacagawea dollar mule struck with a Washington quarter reverse, and if a 2015 P5 cent were discovered with a mismatched reverse, such as a cent, dime, or even a foreign coin reverse, it would instantly become one of the most important modern U.S. coin errors ever found. The value of such a mule would not be measured by guides or price lists but by private negotiations among elite collectors, auction houses, and institutions, and a $15 million valuation would not be unrealistic if the coin were unique and authenticated. Another factor that could elevate the value of a 2015 P5 cent to staggering levels is condition, because rarity alone is powerful, but rarity combined with pristine preservation is unstoppable. And if an extreme error coin survived without circulation wear, scratches, corrosion, or cleaning, retaining original mint luster and sharp details, its desirability would increase dramatically, especially among high-end collectors who demand perfection even in error coins. Authentication and certification play a critical role in this process, because without verification from respected grading services, even the most incredible coin would struggle to achieve its full value, but once confirmed, encapsulated, and documented, it becomes a permanent part of numismatic history, referenced in books, articles, and auction catalogs for generations. Another often overlooked aspect of extreme value is the story behind the coin, because collectors do not just buy metal, they buy history, mystery, and narrative, and a 2015 P5 cent discovered by an ordinary person in circulation, perhaps found in pocket change, a coin roll, or a vending machine return, would capture public imagination far more than a coin quietly pulled from a mint archive, and that story alone would add intangible value, turning the coin into a legend. The psychological impact of owning something that was never supposed to exist, something that defied quality control and survived unnoticed, drives competitive bidding and emotional attachment, which can push prices far beyond rational expectations. The possibility of a $15 million valuation also depends on uniqueness, because if only one example is known or believed to exist, the coin becomes irreplaceable, and when multiple wealthy collectors want the same irreplaceable object, price becomes secondary to desire, and history has shown time and again that unique coins can achieve prices that seem impossible until they happen. It is also important to understand that modern coins can be just as valuable as ancient ones when the right factors align, and the idea that only old coins are valuable is one of the biggest myths in coin collecting, because modern minting technology, while advanced, also creates opportunities for dramatic, system-wide failures that produce errors far more extreme than those seen in earlier eras. And when such errors occur, they stand out precisely because they are so unexpected. Next. 1997 D5 cent. Today we are exploring an incredible and almost unbelievable subject that has fascinated collectors and dreamers alike, the legendary 1997 D5 cent coin, a simple Jefferson nickel struck at the Denver Mint that under very rare and extraordinary circumstances has been rumored, discussed, and theorized to reach a mind-blowing valuation of up to $11 million, and while this figure represents the absolute extreme end of possibility rather than a guaranteed outcome, it is rooted in the powerful combination of rarity, minting errors, historical context, collector demand, and the timeless truth that mistakes can sometimes be worth far more than perfection. So as you listen to this deep dive, imagine holding a seemingly ordinary nickel and realizing it could be one of the most valuable modern coins ever discovered, because the 1997 D5 cent was produced in large numbers for everyday circulation, making it familiar and often overlooked, yet within those millions of coins lies the potential for rare errors that can transform a 5-cent piece into a numismatic legend, and to understand how this is possible we must first appreciate the minting process itself, a high-speed industrial operation where metal planchets are fed into presses, struck with immense force, and ejected at astonishing speeds, and while the system is designed for precision, the sheer volume of production means that occasionally something goes wrong, and when it does, the resulting error can escape into circulation, becoming a hidden treasure waiting to be found. One of the most exciting possibilities for the 1997 D nickel is the existence of an off-metal strike, where a nickel is accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination or even a foreign coin, and if a genuine 1997 D5 cent were struck on a silver alloy planchet, a brass planchet, or an experimental metal intended for testing, the result would be a coin with the wrong weight, color, and metallic composition, immediately setting it apart from normal nickels and placing it into the category of extreme rarity, especially if the planchet was never intended for public circulation, because coins struck on the wrong metal are among the most sought-after errors in the numismatic world, often commanding enormous prices due to their scarcity and the mystery surrounding how they were created. Then there is the fascinating possibility of a dramatic double die error, which occurs during the creation of the dies themselves, when the hub impresses the design onto the die more than once at slightly different angles, resulting in strong and visible doubling on elements like the date, lettering, or Jefferson's profile, and while minor doubling is relatively common and often dismissed, a bold and clearly separated double die on a 1997 D nickel would be an entirely different story, especially if the doubling appeared prominently on the date or key inscriptions, because such errors are visually striking, easy to recognize, and highly desirable among collectors, and when certified by top grading services, they can reach astonishing values. Then we have the possibility of a mule error, one of the most mysterious and valuable mistakes in modern coinage, where the obverse and reverse dies do not match. Imagine a 1997 D Jefferson nickel obverse paired with a reverse intended for a different denomination or an entirely different design, something that should never exist. Yet history proves that such impossible combinations have occurred, and when they do, they become instant legends, often unique or nearly unique, and uniqueness is one of the strongest drivers of multi-million-dollar valuations, because collectors are willing to compete fiercely for something no one else can own. Another powerful error type is the off-center strike, where the planchet is misaligned during striking, resulting in part of the design missing and a blank crescent visible, and while small off-center errors are relatively common, a dramatic off-center strike that still retains the full date and mint mark is far rarer and far more valuable, especially when the strike is extreme, such as 50% or more off-center, because it clearly shows the minting mistake while still allowing the coin to be identified. Then there are blockage errors, which occur when a struck coin fails to eject and becomes stuck to the die, impressing its mirror image onto the next planchet, creating a ghostly, ink-use duplicate of the design, and a full blockage on a 1997 D nickel, especially one with sharp detail and excellent preservation, would be a stunning and highly valuable piece, even more so if combined with other errors like an off-center strike or wrong planchet. Then we must consider rotated die errors, where the obverse and reverse are misaligned beyond acceptable tolerances, and while small rotations are allowed, extreme rotations of 90 degrees or more are collectible and can command high prices, particularly when combined with other unusual features, adding to the coin's uniqueness and appeal. Another intriguing possibility is a strike-through error, where foreign material such as grease, cloth fibers, metal shavings, or other debris interferes with the striking process, leaving parts of the design weak, distorted, or missing entirely. And while many strike-through errors are minor, a dramatic and visually compelling example on a 1997 D nickel could become highly sought after, especially if the pattern created by the obstruction is unusual or aesthetically interesting. Then there are lamination errors, caused by improper bonding or mixing of the metal alloy, resulting in cracks, peeling layers, or sections of metal lifting away from the surface, and these errors can range from subtle to dramatic, with the most extreme examples showing large sections of metal flaking or separating, creating a rugged, almost battle-scarred appearance that collectors find fascinating. Another rare but valuable mistake is a missing or partial clad layer error, where part of the outer metal layer is absent, exposing the core beneath, making the coin look incomplete and instantly suspicious to anyone familiar with normal nickels, and such errors are especially prized when they affect large areas of the coin and are clearly visible without magnification. Then there is the possibility of a transitional error, which occurs during periods of change in composition, design, or production processes. And while the 1997 nickel was not part of a major transition, history has shown that unexpected transitional errors can still occur, such as the accidental use of leftover planchets or experimental materials, and a confirmed transitional error involving a 1997 D5 cent would be a numismatic sensation. Then we must talk about condition, because condition can multiply value dramatically. A coin with incredible errors but heavy wear will always be worth less than the same error preserved in pristine, uncirculated condition, and a 1997 D nickel with major errors graded in gem mint state, showing full luster, sharp details, and no post-mint damage, would be exponentially more valuable, especially if it appears untouched by circulation. Adding to the allure is provenance, the documented history of a coin's discovery and ownership. Because a coin found by an ordinary person in pocket change, later authenticated and proven to be unique or nearly unique, creates a powerful narrative that captures public imagination, drives media coverage, and attracts bidders far beyond the traditional coin collecting community, including investors and institutions, and this broader attention can push prices into extraordinary territory. Then there is the psychological and cultural factor, the dream that anyone, anywhere, could find a fortune hiding in plain sight. This dream fuels interest, competition, and sometimes frenzy, and when a coin becomes a symbol of that dream, its value transcends metal and face value, becoming a piece of modern folklore. And this is where numbers like $11 million come into discussion, not as everyday prices, but as potential outcomes when rarity, uniqueness, condition, story, and demand all align perfectly. History has shown us that modern coins are not immune to record-breaking prices. And while older coins often dominate headlines, modern era coins have proven that age is less important than rarity and story. As the hobby continues to grow globally, driven by online communities, viral discoveries, and increased transparency through third-party grading, demand for extraordinary era coins continues to rise, especially among younger collectors and new investors looking for tangible assets with compelling narratives. And the 1997 D5 cent, still circulating and still overlooked, represents that tantalizing possibility, because the odds may be small, but they are not zero, and every legendary coin was once just another piece of change until someone noticed something strange, something different, something wrong, and that wrongness became priceless. So the next time you come across a nickel, remember this story, remember the potential errors, the mistakes, the possibilities, and the dream, because in the world of numismatics, attention to detail can turn 5 cents into a fortune, and the next great discovery could be resting quietly in someone's pocket right now. Next, 2006 P5 cent coin. Today you are about to dive deep into one of the most astonishing modern numismatic possibilities ever discussed, a story that challenges everything people think they know about pocket change, because this episode is all about how an ordinary-looking 2006 P5 cent coin, something millions of people have spent without hesitation, could theoretically be worth an incredible $14 million due to extreme mint errors, rare production mistakes, and extraordinary Circumstances that elevate it from a common nickel into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure, and as you stay with this story from beginning to end, you will understand how such a value is even possible, what kinds of errors and anomalies could make it real, and why experts believe that coins like this may still be out there, hiding in plain sight. The year 2006 was part of the modern era of U.S. coinage, a time when minting technology was highly advanced, quality control was strict, and the idea of a massive error slipping through seemed almost impossible. Yet history proves again and again that when millions upon millions of coins are struck at high speed, even the most sophisticated systems can fail in spectacular ways, and when they do, the resulting coins can become some of the most valuable objects ever produced by the U.S. Mint. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by the P Mint mark on nickels, produced an enormous quantity of 5-cent coins in 2006, intended for daily commerce, vending machines, parking meters, and cash registers across the country, and because of this high mintage, the 2006 P 5 cent is generally considered common, but common does not mean worthless. Because rarity in numismatics is not always about how many coins were made, but about how many survived with extraordinary characteristics that were never meant to exist. To understand how a 2006 P 5 cent could reach a value as high as $14 million, we must first understand the minting process itself, because every error coin tells a story of something going wrong at a specific stage, whether during planchet preparation, metal composition, die creation, striking, or inspection, and when multiple failures occur together, the result can be a coin so unique that it defies standard valuation. One of the most powerful possibilities is an off-metal or wrong planchet error of an extreme nature, where a 2006 P 5 cent is struck not on the standard copper-nickel alloy planchet, but on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination or an entirely different metal, and history has shown that such mistakes, while rare, are not impossible, especially during periods of high production. Imagine a 2006 P 5 cent struck on a silver planchet intended for another coin, resulting in a nickel that appears lighter in color, weighs differently, and has a metallic ring unlike any standard nickel, or even more shocking, a 2006 P 5 cent struck on a gold or platinum planchet that was never meant to enter circulation at all, perhaps part of an experimental batch, a test strike, or a leftover blank accidentally fed into the production line, and while this sounds unbelievable, similar mistakes have occurred before, creating some of the most famous and valuable coins in existence. Another extraordinary scenario involves a transitional or experimental alloy error, where the mint was testing alternative metal compositions for future use, something the public rarely hears about, and if a small number of experimental planchets were accidentally struck with 2006 P nickel dies and released, those coins would represent unauthorized survivors of a process never intended for collectors, and such coins would instantly become legendary, because they would combine modern rarity, mystery, and government experimentation into a single object, and the numismatic community would fight fiercely for ownership, pushing values into the multi-million-dollar range. Die errors also play a critical role in extreme valuations, especially when they are severe, dramatic, and combined with other anomalies, and one of the most visually striking possibilities is a full brockage error, where a coin becomes stuck to a die and impresses a mirrored, in-use image onto the next planchet, resulting in a coin with one normal side and one fully reversed design, and while brockages exist, a perfect full brockage on a modern 2006 P 5 cent, especially if found in uncirculated condition, would be exceptionally rare, and if paired with additional errors like off-center striking or rotation, its value would skyrocket. Another catastrophic die-related error is a die cap, where a coin adheres to a die and continues striking other planchets, gradually forming a cap-like shape with distorted and stretched designs, and if a 2006 P 5 cent were discovered in an early or intermediate die cap stage with recognizable details and dramatic deformation, it would be considered a museum-quality piece, and its value would be driven not just by rarity but by educational significance, because it would visually demonstrate a failure mode rarely seen in modern coinage. One of the most sensational possibilities that could push a 2006 P 5 cent toward a $14 million valuation is a mule error, where the obverse and reverse dies from two different coins are accidentally paired together, creating a hybrid coin that was never authorized to exist, and mule errors are among the rarest and most celebrated mistakes in numismatic history, because they represent a fundamental breakdown in mint procedures. Imagine a 2006 P5 cent bearing the obverse of a nickel and the reverse of a different denomination, such as a cent or dime, or even a foreign coin reverse, something that would instantly capture global attention, dominate numismatic news, and become a crown jewel of modern U.S. coinage. And if such a mule were confirmed as unique, its value would not be limited by price guides but by the willingness of elite collectors and institutions to pay whatever it takes to secure it. Another critical factor in reaching such an extreme valuation is condition, because even the most dramatic error loses value if it is heavily worn, damaged, or altered, and a 2006 P5 cent error that survived in pristine, uncirculated condition, retaining original mint luster, sharp details, and untouched surfaces, would command far more attention and money than a circulated example, especially in the modern market where collectors place enormous emphasis on preservation. Authentication and certification are equally important, because extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof, and a coin rumored to be worth $14 million would need to be examined, tested, weighed, measured, and verified by leading experts and grading services, and once authenticated, it would become a documented part of numismatic history, referenced in academic studies, auction catalogs, and collector lore for decades to come. Another powerful element that drives extreme value is uniqueness, because if only one example of a specific error is known or believed to exist, the coin becomes irreplaceable, and when multiple wealthy collectors desire the same irreplaceable object, price becomes almost irrelevant, and history has shown that unique coins often achieve prices that shock even seasoned experts. The story behind the coin also matters more than many people realize, because collectors are drawn not just to rarity, but to narrative, mystery, and human connection, and a 2006 P5 cent discovered by an ordinary person in circulation, perhaps found in a roll from a bank, a pocketful of change, or an old jar forgotten in a drawer, would capture the imagination of the public far more than a coin quietly pulled from a government archive, and that emotional appeal would add intangible value that cannot be measured by metal content or error type alone. The idea that a modern nickel could be worth $14 million challenges traditional assumptions about coin collecting, but it also reflects a deeper truth about the hobby, which is that value is created at the intersection of rarity, demand, story, and significance, and when all four align, even the smallest and most ordinary objects can become priceless. The 2006 P5 cent represents a perfect canvas for such speculation because it comes from a time of massive production, advanced technology, and hidden experimentation, creating conditions where rare failures could occur unnoticed, and while the vast majority of these coins are worth only face value, the possibility that one escaped with extraordinary errors keeps collectors searching. This is why careful examination matters, why weighing coins, checking their edges, observing their color, and comparing their details can reveal hidden secrets, because sometimes the difference between 5 cents and $14 million lies in details so subtle that they are invisible to the untrained eye. The modern coin market continues to evolve as more people become aware that valuable discoveries are not limited to ancient hoards or dusty attics, but can exist in everyday life, and as information spreads faster than ever through online communities, auctions, and social media, the discovery of an extreme error coin can instantly become a global event. If a confirmed 2006 P5 cent with multiple catastrophic errors were to surface today, it would ignite debates among experts, attract bids from around the world, and likely end up in a private collection or museum, securing its place as one of the most important modern U.S. coins ever known. As you listen to this story, remember that coin collecting is not just about money, it is about curiosity, patience. Last. 1989 P5 cent. Today we are diving into one of the most fascinating modern coin mysteries ever discussed in numismatic circles, the astonishing possibility of a 1987 P5 cent coin reaching a jaw-dropping valuation of up to $10 million due to extremely rare minting errors, production mistakes, and once-in-a-generation combinations of anomalies that elevate a common Jefferson nickel into the realm of legendary collectibles. And while this valuation represents the absolute peak of potential rather than a typical market price, it is grounded in real principles that have driven historic coin sales for decades, because in the world of rare coins, mistakes are not flaws but fingerprints of history, and sometimes those fingerprints are so unique that collectors, museums, and investors are willing to compete fiercely to own them. The 1987 P5 cent was struck at the Philadelphia Mint during a period of high-speed mass production where millions of nickels were produced for everyday commerce, making the coin itself extremely common in normal condition, yet within that sea of ordinary change lies the potential for extraordinary errors that could transform a single 5-cent piece into a numismatic phenomenon, and to understand how this could happen we must first appreciate the minting process itself, where metal planchets are punched, washed, annealed, and then struck between dies with immense pressure. And although the system is engineered for precision, no industrial process is immune to failure, especially when operating at the scale and speed required to supply an entire nation with coinage. One of the most powerful and valuable possibilities for a 1987 P nickel is an off-metal strike, where a nickel is accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination or even a foreign coin, and if such a coin were struck on a silver alloy planchet, a brass planchet, or an experimental metal never meant for circulation, the resulting piece would immediately stand out due to its incorrect weight, color, and metallic composition, and once authenticated, such an error could become one of the most valuable modern U.S. coins ever discovered because off-metal strikes are among the rarest and most coveted mint errors known, especially when they involve unexpected or undocumented materials. Then there is the electrifying possibility of a dramatic double die error, which occurs when the die itself receives multiple misaligned impressions during its creation, causing bold and clearly separated doubling on design elements such as the date, lettering, or Thomas Jefferson's portrait, and while minor machine doubling is common and generally worthless, true hub doubling that is strong, visible to the naked eye, and consistent across the coin is exceptionally rare, and a confirmed 1987 P5 cent with extreme double die characteristics, especially on the date or inscriptions, would immediately become a centerpiece of modern numismatics. Then we move into the realm of mule errors, one of the most mysterious and valuable types of mint mistakes, where the obverse and reverse dies used to strike a coin do not belong together. Imagine a 1987 P. Jefferson nickel obverse paired with a reverse from an entirely different denomination or design, something that should be impossible under normal mint procedures. Yet history has proven that such mistakes can and do happen, and when they escape detection they become instant legends, often unique or nearly unique, and uniqueness is one of the most powerful drivers of multi-million-dollar valuations because collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums for something no one else can own. Another major error category that could elevate a 1987 P nickel into extreme value territory is a full or dramatic blockage error, which occurs when a struck coin fails to eject from the press and becomes stuck to the die, causing its mirror image to be impressed onto the next planchet, creating a ghostly, ink-use duplicate of the design. And a full blockage with sharp detail and excellent preservation is already rare, but when paired with other errors or exceptional condition it becomes exponentially more valuable. Then there are off-center strikes, caused by planchets not being properly seated during striking, resulting in part of the design missing and a blank crescent visible. And while minor off-center strikes are relatively common, extreme examples that retain the full date and mint mark are far rarer and far more valuable, especially when the strike is 50% or more off-center, because such coins clearly display the minting error while remaining identifiable. Rotated die errors also play a role in potential value, occurring when the obverse and reverse dies are misaligned beyond acceptable tolerances, and while small rotations are permitted, extreme rotations of 90 degrees or more are collectible and desirable, particularly when combined with other unusual features. Then we have strike-through errors, where foreign material such as grease, cloth fibers, metal shavings, or other debris interferes with the striking process, leaving parts of the design weak, distorted, or missing. And while many strike-through errors are subtle, dramatic and visually compelling examples can command significant premiums, especially when the pattern created by the obstruction is unusual or aesthetically striking. Lamination errors are another fascinating category, caused by improper bonding or mixing of the metal alloy, resulting in cracks, peeling layers, or sheets of metal lifting from the coin's surface. And extreme lamination errors can look almost violent, as if the coin is tearing itself apart, which adds visual drama and collector appeal. Then there is the rare but highly prized missing or partial clad layer error, where part of the outer metal layer is absent, exposing the core beneath and making the coin appear unfinished or structurally wrong, and such errors are especially valuable when they affect large areas of the coin and are easily visible without magnification. Another extraordinary possibility is a transitional or experimental error, where a coin is struck using leftover, prototype, or experimental materials not intended for circulation. And while the 1987 nickel was not part of a widely known transition, history has shown that unexpected transitional errors can still occur, and a confirmed example involving a 1987 P5 cent would cause shockwaves throughout the numismatic world. Then there is the critical factor of condition, because condition can multiply a coin's value dramatically. A heavily worn error coin will always be worth less than the same error preserved in pristine, uncirculated condition, and a 1987 P nickel exhibiting major errors while retaining full luster, sharp details, and no post-mint damage could reach values far beyond expectations, especially if graded at the highest levels by respected third-party grading services. Provenance also plays a crucial role, because a well-documented discovery story can significantly increase a coin's desirability and market value. A coin found in circulation by an ordinary person, authenticated and proven to be unique or nearly unique, captures public imagination, attracts media attention, and draws bidders from beyond the traditional coin collecting community, including investors and institutions, and this broader demand can push prices into extraordinary territory. Then there is the psychological and cultural dimension, the universal dream that hidden wealth could be sitting unnoticed in a pocket, jar, or drawer, and when a coin becomes a symbol of that dream it transcends metal and face value, becoming a piece of modern folklore. And this is where figures like $10 million enter the conversation, not as everyday expectations but as theoretical peaks where rarity, uniqueness, condition, story, and demand converge perfectly. History has already shown us that modern coins are capable of reaching astonishing prices when they break rules and challenge assumptions, and as the hobby continues to grow globally through online platforms, social media, and increased transparency, interest in extraordinary error coins continues to rise, especially among new collectors drawn to viral stories of pocket change turning into fortunes, and the 1987 P5 cent, still circulating and still often ignored, represents that tantalizing possibility, because while the odds of finding such an extreme error are incredibly small, they are not zero, and every legendary coin in history began as an ordinary piece of change until someone noticed something strange, something different, something wrong, and that wrongness became priceless. So the next time you see a nickel, remember this story, remember the errors, the mistakes, the possibilities, and the dream, because in numismatics, attention to detail can transform 5 cents into a fortune, and the next great discovery could be resting quietly in someone's pocket right now.